When in doubt, don't. Benjamin Franklin. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Podnuts Pro. I am your host, Marvin B. Ladies and gentlemen, Podnuts Pro is the podcast for IT business support. If you are a solo technician, managed service provider, IT consultant of any kind, we're here to help you run your business better, smarter, and faster. We provide you tips and stories and products to help you run your business as best as you can. Tonight, I'll be talking about some of the tools that I have fallen in love with and out of love with over the past year as I've been trying to simplify what I've got here going at the office. First thing I do want to say is, if you will notice, I am in what we would call layers. So many of you probably don't realize this, but Florida does get cold. I know that I said last week that we were entering our winter stage, and that was really nothing. This week, we are truly in the throes of winter as the temperatures have dipped down into the 40s. So I've had to introduce this thing called layers, where underneath my long sleeve, I have a t-shirt, I have this long sleeve overshirt, and then I have a sweatshirt for when I go outside, because it is going to dip down to 45, 46 tonight. And that is cold enough that even our new Florida man, Mike Smith, has made comments about that. And I did touch base with Mike a little bit earlier. He made a comment on his show last week that he was doing with Corey Fruitman that Floridians were really, fretting about how cold it was, and it was just in the 50s. Well, as it dips into the 40s now, and remember, Mike is actually a little further north in Florida and on the Gulf Coast, so he actually gets temperatures a little bit colder than I. But one of the things that he loved to say is that he is still very happy to be in Florida, because he sent me this picture. I can't put it up on the screen to share it because it's still on my phone, but this picture of snow is his home back up in Pennsylvania. So he will never, ever have to worry about that much snow where he is now in the state of Florida. I guess his only wish now is that he gets to see falling iguana. That might happen over in the area of Tampa. So we shall see. I will touch base with him, and I'm sure he will keep us updated. So as we go through announcements, let me first say that I need to give out a little thank you to a gentleman by the name of Roman. Roman actually bought me 4 cups of coffee last week. And by that, I mean he went to podnuts.com, podnutspro.com, and did a donation with the Buy Me a Coffee app. If you go to podnutspro.com, you have 2 options of which you can support the show. Actually, there's 3, but 2 options under the donate tab is to buy me a cup of coffee, or to do a donation with PayPal. And you can go there anytime and doing that, and that will be great. You can also click on the store link on podnutspro.com, and that will take you to Amazon, where you can make your purchases there. Purchase prices are the same for you, but we get a little bit of a kickback here to help me do some of these great things on the show. Also, if you are using the Edge browser, Chrome browser, but not Firefox, on the homepage of Podnuts Pro, there is actually some items there that will be what's called My Amazon Picks. And those are usually going to be things that I have either purchased or used over the last few weeks. And currently on the page right now, we just purchased a Xerox VersaLink C405 for the office. It is set up. It's a monster. We don't have everything working on it yet, but it looks like it's going to be a very, very nice color multifunction unit for us. That's going to be great. Tonight, I'll also be talking about the Easy Dupe Soho NVMe copier duplicator that I purchased a little over a month ago. I've used it. I love it. So I'll be giving a little rundown on that. And then a couple of other things that we've either talked about or people have ordered. So I see we've got people joining us live. If you go to podnuts.com/live every Wednesday at 8 p.m., almost every Wednesday, there will be some that I will not be here, probably the Wednesday of before Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year, something like that. But most Wednesdays will be here at 8 o'clock, so you can always catch the show live. You can either get notified on Facebook if you are a member of the Podnuts Pro Facebook page, if you subscribe to the YouTube channel, or just always go to podnutspro.com/live. If you would like to be a part of the show, if you've got some comments for me, want to be a guest, you can also go to podnutspro.com/guest. And that will take you to the sign up page where you can pick a Wednesday and just hop on the show and be a part here. And the reason I mentioned about people joining us live, because this is a video podcast. If you're listening to the audio, some of the things we do on here will be best viewed on the web. But one of those things is a couple of comments in the chat. John has mentioned that it is going to be 38 on the coast of Florida, specifically the West Coast in Venice. And then Michael puts a little wah, wah, wah. 40 is still shorts weather. Still haven't put on a jacket here in Milwaukee. Well, Milwaukee. You will never catch me there in the dead of winter. As a matter of fact, when I did speak with Mike Smith, he mentioned that he still has the air on where he is. And that is quite interesting. In my household, we have, I forget how it switches, but we have one of those units where it automatically will switch from air to heat. So, of course, it has been switching to heat at night. It switches back to air during the day because we have been getting up to some decent temperatures. But I got home this afternoon and the temperature on the thermostat said 71. So the heat would not kick in until 70, and she was cold. She actually asked me to turn the air up just so that it would just take off the nip. So I had to push the air up to 72 degrees. So don't wah to me, wah to the wife. So maybe I'll get her on the show and you guys can remind her about that. All right, let me see if there's any other announcements. I do want to also give a thank you to both Roman and to Al. Both of them emailed me probably in the last couple of weeks after I had talked about the possibility of coming up with some ideas to do an Active Directory / group policy show. And I did get some specific questions. And one of them said that they would be willing to do a podcast. So we are working on that as we speak. I should also tell you that we do have a couple of shows in February that have already been put on the schedule. I'm going to have some advanced networking 102 courses where we'll talk about things to do in networking. I'm going to talk more about my favorite network tools. And we're going to get an update from NetAlly. They've had some upgrades to some of their stuff. And we will, of course, talk about those things. All right, that was going to do it. And I was going to go into my topic of my favorite tools, but it looks like we have a very special guest that has popped into the green room. And this is very timely because I had talked about him based on a customer story a few weeks ago. He helped me out, and this has been a great thing. So let me bring to the stage Mr. Bradley Gross. Brad, how are you?
How are you, Marvin? Good to see you.
Good to see you. Look at that lighting you got going on.
I have, the mysterious lighting. It's what is it, 8 o'clock, 8:15 here, and I had to find a room where no one else was, right? Where no one else was running around and making noise, and then I had to set up my ring light, which we all have, and so yeah, I'm just hoping that technologically everything is working okay.
I think we're doing good.
Good.
A little bit of an echo, but I think we can.
I can fix that too. I can fix that. Hang on. That's, I come prepared.
There you go. Sweet. Well, while you're doing that, I want to mention to people that the reason this was timely is that I had reached out to Bradley Gross. And for those of you that do not know, Bradley Gross has a law office down here that focuses specifically on technology. And he helps a lot of us with our contracts and our agreements, specifically the master service agreements, scopes of work, and all of that stuff. I had a situation a few weeks ago where I had what I call a bad customer breakup. And it wasn't me breaking up with the customer. It was the customer breaking up amongst themselves. And so that actually turned out to be a pretty interesting deal. I had to call Bradley because there was legality involved. There were threats ensued. And just today, you actually posted your broadcast that I believe was inspired by my story. Is that correct? It was
entirely inspired by you. How's the echo, by the way? Is the echo resolved now?
Yes, much better, much better.
Good. Yes, better. That broadcast, which was posted today, is entitled something to the effect of when your customers' directors are fighting, what should you do?
Yeah.
And so your situation was, it's not unique. It happens more often than people think. And it's really a problem for MSPs because they have to sort of figure out what to do when their customer is giving them mixed signals, right? Because your customer is an entity, and an entity is comprised of different directors and managers that might send different signals to you. So what do you do?
Yeah, and that was indeed the case. And what's funny is I have worked with lawyers for many years. They comprise about 70% of my business. And I've always had situations where some of them have had multiple partners, multiple names on the doors. Mm-hmm. And for those offices that are multi-site, they often will have a managing partner that is responsible for one office, and that person will make the decisions for that office. But what has happened in the past is that I've always sent invoices and always done my agreements with one managing partner in the main office, which is where the bills go, which is where the checks get signed. And I've always been able to say, well, whoever signs the check is the one that I deal with.
Probably the one who has authority, yeah.
Right. But in this particular case, I had an organization where there were technically 3 companies in one, and they were splitting. And of course, it was the person that I had never dealt with. I mean, I dealt with him a little bit, but never sat in a meeting and made decisions about the IT department and infrastructure and stuff with that person. And all of a sudden that person's like, I need passwords to email, to phones, to, I need the computers, I need the admin passwords. And I'm like, wait a minute. Mm-hmm. So, and then of course he, said, if I don't get that to him in an hour,
he's going to sue.
He is going to draft up a letter to sue us.
Yeah. And that's the issue. It's these things are usually pretty smooth, especially in a law firm where you have a managing partner or a company in which you are handed over to someone specific. But when partners in any company, law firms or otherwise, start to fight, all of those bets are off the table. And what happens is, as happened in your situation, you will have different directors suddenly saying, wait a minute, I'm a director here. I'm a manager. I'm entitled to this stuff. And what the result is that MSPs are forced sometimes to think about, well, should I be giving this person information? I've never dealt with a person before, but they have the title director, right? So maybe I should. Well, what if I do it and I'm wrong? And MSPs, quite candidly, should not be put into this position. But, the clients aren't thinking about that when they're fighting amongst themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
It's funny. Sometimes I get comments to where they will say, okay, well, if this person says anything to you, whatever they want, just give it to them.
Hmm.
Now, that happens. And of course, I'm fine with that as long as they sign the check. That's fine.
Yeah.
I've only had one situation where they've kind of said, okay, you know what? Don't give them anything that they want because they haven't brought in enough money to pay
Right.
for what they want. So that sometimes
Right.
happens. But I remember asking you, how often does situations like this happen where I had an agreement in place? I had signed documents as to what we were supposed to do and who I was supposed to deal with.
Mhm.
But apparently all that got thrown out the window for them and they were in a panic. And even the people that I normally deal with were like, what's the quickest thing we can do to resolve this?
Yeah. Yeah, that kind of thing happens quite often. And because corporations don't usually have policies or procedures in place for this type of thing, for an internal dispute, uh, they hot potato the issue over to the MSP. And so comments like, what's the quickest thing we could do to resolve this? How can you help us make this go away? Those types of comments and questions are often thrown to the service provider, leaving the service provider in a very strange position. Are you going to follow the written contract? Are you going to follow what you're being told over the telephone? Do you feel any empathy for the company? Should you feel any empathy for the company? And if so, what happens if you're wrong? Right? What happens if you're wrong? Because at this moment, when you're on the phone with the company trying to help them, and they're in panic mode, they see everything you're doing as wonderful, and it's a gratuitous kind of behavior. But after everything is over and the dust settles, there will be hindsight. They will turn around and say, we had a policy in place for this, or we had a contract with you in place for something like this. Why didn't you follow it? And it's really not going to be a great answer to say, you sounded like you were nervous and you needed my help. That's not really a great answer. So it's not really fair for a company to put you in this position, but it happens more often than you'd really care to know about.
Yeah. So I don't want to give away too much of what your podcast was because I do want people to go to it, and I'm going to put the link to it in there. The Technology Broadcast, and your title is correct. Your customers' directors are fighting. What should you do?
That's right.
And luckily, this situation worked itself out. People calmed down, and there were some things that I told them, look, you have to do this before I can do anything. And luckily they listened to me. Now, part of it was the fact that as soon as I was told there's attorney involved, I said, okay, I'll get my attorney involved.
Right.
And I think that kind of shocked them because I think
because they thought you were going to bring a knife to a gunfight.
Right.
Right.
Yep. And a lot of times they probably are used to bullying service technicians like us, and just because our mind frame a lot of times it's, look, let me do whatever to keep the customer happy.
Right.
And I couldn't do that in this case and wasn't going to be bullied, and thank goodness I took that chance.
I'll tell you, one of the great weapons of lawyers, and I do say this in the broadcast that I posted today, the great weapon that lawyers love to wield, to brandish, is the weapon of liability. If you don't do this, then I'm going to hold you liable for, and they come up with a list, a parade of horribles that make you start to sweat. Liability is the great weapon. So my advice, to everyone, to you, to everyone else who is listening, is that just because a lawyer threatens doesn't mean it will be so. And sometimes the solution, just like you said a moment ago, Marvin, is to say, well, if you're going to threaten, now I have to bring in my lawyer. Well, now it starts to get expensive on both sides, and you'd be surprised at how often the other side will quickly start to back down. But the one thing that an MSP should never do is panic and have this knee-jerk sort of spontaneous reaction of, oh, you're getting a lawyer involved? Okay, all right, what do you want me to do?
All right.
Right? Because that doesn't lead you down a good path. It can only lead to bad things in the future. It might give you the momentary feeling of security, but really what you've done is you've set yourself up to hope that you've done the right thing, because if you haven't, it'll come back to bite you in the end.
Right.
Yeah.
So I appreciate all that you've done for me, and a good example of how Bradley Gross can help you if you are in need of his services and you need some agreements in place. Even if you need to find something after the fact for a situation just like this, he's the gentleman that can help you do it.
Thank you, Marvin.
Brad, I want to thank you for popping on. I should
Of
probably have
course.
asked you, because I know last year, no travels. I usually see you out on the ASCII circuit and you're out and about. Anything coming up for you, or how are things going?
It's we're still sort of in that virtual mode.
Yeah.
So I'm still doing my broadcasts. We're going to start a sort of legal peer group, which if anyone wants more information about, just send an email to us at info@bradleygross.com. And we're anxiously waiting to get back out on the road. All this staying at home stuff is starting to wear thin. So looking forward to seeing everyone out there.
All right. Well, again, folks, Bradley Gross, the law office of Bradley Gross, your technology specialist, I guess, in the area of law.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. I'll let you get back to your evening and have yourself a good night.
You too. Take care, everyone.
All right. So nice little impromptu show up there. Thank you very much to Bradley for coming on. And as I had mentioned earlier, anytime that you want to hop on the show, you can be free to do that. Head over to podnutspro.com/guest to sign up. There are a group of people that I've been putting together, and I don't know the exact term yet, but past guests, some of the texts that we have in our inner circle will have a link that anytime that I'm on the air, they can pop on, just like Bradley Gross did. If you want to be a part of that, one of the benefits to being on that list is I can send you information ahead of time of what I'll be talking about on the show, or I can let you know when there's going to be an episode where I don't have a specific guest or a specific topic that we're going to focus on for the entire show. A show like this where it's a little bit open, and I welcome for anybody else to come on the show and help make it better. So thank you to Bradley Gross. And again, I will have his information in the show notes, and you can look forward to hearing his technology broadcast. Your customers, directors are fighting. What should you do? He helped me tremendously in that situation. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about my favorite tools. Now, I know that about a month ago, maybe a little, let's see, when I don't remember when I purchased it. Maybe it was 6 weeks ago. I had shown everybody a easy dupe PCIe NVMe duplicator. And let me do this. Let me actually bring up a picture of it so you guys can see exactly what I'm talking about. And this is the duplicator right here. And it is a 1:7 duplicator for the PCIe NVMe. And I got it because when I was going through and doing the 25 computers for my customer at the end of last year, I already had a duplicator for the 2.5-inch SATA disk, and I have been loving that and doing that, but I did not have anything to duplicate these M2 drives. And I had purchased later in the year last year a 1-to-1 duplicator. So I was able to copy from one drive to another. And first of all, it worked, and I was happy about that, but it took too long. And when I say too long, meaning I actually had to let it run overnight, because copying over I think it was 200 gigs off of a 512 drive, took almost 7 hours for that one-to-one duplicator. So I quickly scrapped that and started looking for something that would be a little bit faster and can do multiples at a single time. This was the first one that I saw that was under $2,000. And I know that if you look at the price, you're going to see it is $14.99 on Amazon. But I will say this, spend that money. This is a fantastic duplicator. It does 1 to 7, and it actually did a very quick copy. And now I want to do another share. So I'm going to stop this screen here, and we are going to go share some videos that I did earlier. If I can find them here, let's scroll down there. Here we go. So we'll share that. And the first thing I should probably say is when I first got the drive, I was actually a little frustrated because if you look, and I've got to see if I can rotate this. These were the instructions that came with the drive. One page, and basically it says, oh, am I still not showing it? Hang on, folks. I think we're showing the wrong screen because I opened this up in Adobe. So let me stop that and share a different screen so you can see what I opened up. So I just show all of screen 2 this time. So this was the instruction guide, basically a quick start guide. And it showed you simple steps like plug it in, turn it on, insert the master disk into the source, then hit copy, wait for the green lights to blink, and voila. And so at first I thought, well, that's kind of sucky. And the reason that I thought it was kind of sucky is when you look at the actual drive, it doesn't tell you what source, what of these. So for instance, here, I just put 8 sticks in, and you can barely see this on screen, but you just have to assume that the first slot is your source and that the other 7 are the targets. So I did that and got fairly lucky because that was the way it was. Now you'll see down here, these particular sticks are 256 meg drives. They only have about 180 megs on them, but I'm going to magnify this here. But when I did the copy, it did 100% in just under 12 and a half minutes. So pretty quick, pretty good for what I needed. So I'm able to duplicate one source to 7 targets and knock out 8 systems at a time. So that was pretty good. Now you also see down here, it's got controls. The first one, of course, is copy. You can also do a compare, which I have not done yet. And from what I can gather, you can just simply compare the copies that you did, or you can copy disk. You can erase and format these drives with here. I've not done these yet on any of these drives because I'm using all of them in new systems that I'm deploying. But at some point, I will try that and let you know there. Just to show you another. So here is. So this is the first connection that I did. So it shows you what it looks like when the lights are blinking green and doing the copy. And you can see it went to 1%, 2% within 14 seconds. And then let me go to the end here and show this video. And that again is showing you that it is just finishing the 100% in under 12 and a half minutes. So all in all, I think it's a good investment. If you need to duplicate these drives, it is a little steep at $1,500, but being able to do 7 at one time will quickly pay for itself in just a couple of months, assuming you do at least one copy a month. I think it's going to be fantastic because even though you can put a stick in and install Windows in, 15, 20 minutes, one of the things that I loved about this is that I was able to pre-install a lot of my customer software. So we do the Microsoft Office volume license, so I can pre-install that. We actually have a volume license, or not the volume license, it's called the TLP license for Adobe Acrobat. So I could pre-install that. I do all of the Windows updates for the customer. I don't wait until we get on site to do those updates. So I do all of the updates. I install all of the extra software that I'm going to use with Ninite. So I install all of that and I get the computer completely as ready as possible. And then I will clone the drive so that I don't have to do those installations on those computers on site. And that probably saves me 1 to 2 hours per computer, depending on the updates, depending on the software. So 1 to 2 hours saved per system quickly added up to, for instance, on the 8, let's just say I saved 7 hours. At my hourly rate, that was half the cost of this duplicator. So I think that that is a really good investment for the Soho NVMe M2 PCIe duplicator. And if it will sanitize those drives and erase and format for me, I think that'll be great as well. The one thing that I probably would love to do at some point is to add on a certification report that if we do wipe or formatted drives, it can print a report so that I can prove to customers that, yes, we did wipe it and here is your certification paper for that. Don't have that yet. I've seen one that was a lot of money. And I'll talk about that later if I ever get it to review. I probably will never buy it. So that was it. Now, speaking of duplicators, I do need to do an update. So I can't remember if it was this past summer or the summer before, where I had talked about the idea of building my own duplication and sanitation computer. And I thought it was going to be a great idea because I had come across, and I'm going to share out another screen here. I had come across this little gadget, the the Icy Dock Quad Bay. Let me make this a little bit bigger for you. SATA/SAS SSD/HDD trayless hop swap dock. And with this bay, I was able to, well, you're able to insert 4 2.5-inch drives and either duplicate them or sanitize them. And then I also had gotten, and that's probably not a good word for English, but that's what I'm saying right now. And let me share the other tab. That was the Quad Bay. And this one is, yep, I think that's it. Yep, here we go. The IC dock, and basically it's the similar thing, but this is it's a 3 by 3.5-inch SATA/SAS, and you can fit 3 5.25-inch drives. And the reason I got these is because I wanted to be able to sanitize not just SATA drives out of workstations, but server drives. So I've got some clients that with HIPAA and legal compliance, I need to be able to certify that their drives are wiped in their servers. And rather than having to send this out to somebody else to do it, where I've got to pay them and then I've got to upcharge the customer, I thought, let me build this machine where I can do it myself. And I found some computers, and they were the HP Z workstations, and they're full-size cases where I could fit both of these bays in there. So I could have the 3 5.25-inch bays, and I could have the 4 2.5-inch bays. And the theory was I could be able to wipe or duplicate 7 drives at a time. And I would be able to use the active disk, the active kill disk software to produce my certification papers. And let me tell you, when I first put these in, now there's some other stuff you have to buy, so don't think that you're just going to buy these and it's going to be over. Obviously, to do the SAS, you have to have a SAS controller, and then you actually have to have a SAS to SATA converter cable. And in this case, for the 3.5-inch drives, you have to have a SAS to 3 SATA connection, and for the other one, you have to have a SAS to 4 SATA cable. So I got all that, got the controller, and it was funny because the Z Station that I got originally had Windows 7 on it, and they worked. All 7 bays acknowledged, and I could stick drives in all of them, and they seemed to work. The problem is when I put all 7 in at one time, I didn't have enough power in the machine to actually recognize all 7 drives. So I thought, okay, this is going to work. I'm going to get a new station. So I ordered a full tower and did a fresh install of Windows 10. I took the motherboard out of the HP station, put it in this station, wiped it, put on Windows 10. Once I did that, nothing worked. Could not recognize either of the IC dock bays. So my plans went up in smoke. Obviously, I could not go back to Windows 7, which I did not want to. So I was not happy with that. So I will put out the question to any of you out there. Has anybody been able to do what I attempted to do? The reason I ask is I'm actually fine. I do have a 4-bay toaster station that I connect to a Windows 10 machine. I have the active kill disk software licensed for 4 drives, and I can do either 2.5 or 3.5-inch drives in that toaster. They have to be SATA, but I can at least do those. I still cannot do SAS drives. So that's why I want to try to get these working in a machine where I can do SAS drives and I can sanitize servers. And again, not have to send that out to somebody else who's going to charge me a lot of money. So that is what I'm asking for. I'm also putting these links in because if you guys want to get these IC docks, they are nice. They fit snugly into a full tower case. And again, I've got the 3-bay for the 3.5-inch drives and a 4-bay for the 2.5-inch drives. And these are both SATA and SAS. If you guys know of any other device that would be better, let me know. Preferably something that, I don't know, I guess I do have to do the SAS to SATA cables, but it took a little bit of time to get all of those together. Once you got it, then you had to be told to go here and get this. These drives only come with SATA to SATA. So in order to do the SAS, I had to get a SAS controller with the SAS cables. So that was that. All right. Let me unshare this screen and let's get back here. And one last tool that I want to talk about. Well, I've got a couple, but let's see here. We're at 40 minutes. All right, we can do this. I am starting to fall out of love with the Wattbox. I have used the Wattbox for 4 years and they have been fantastic. However, this past month, I have had 2 fail. And I had seen on the Facebook that people were starting to complain about Wattboxes failing. I had not had that issue, so I didn't pay too much attention. I cannot find where those posts are now. So if anybody knows where those are and you want to send me the link to those, If they're still having that discussion, I would like to get involved and find out what's going on. I sent an email off to SnapAV, have not received a response yet, which doesn't make me too happy. And I am not quite yet ready to purchase the new ones until I find out what's wrong with the old ones, because what's frustrating me and would probably frustrate you is when you go into the web interface, there are no errors that pop up on the Wattbox. They say that they're running. They do not show any issues. And I'll tell you what the two problems were. In one location, the Wattbox literally stopped sending power to the outlets. The outlets still showed up green on the Wattbox, meaning it looked like they were powered up, but there was no power. The network interface for the Wattbox still worked properly, still reported as if everything was okay, went into the web interface, and it looked like you could do everything in the inside of the web UI, but nothing would happen. Nada. So complete failure as far as I'm concerned. The second unit happened just this past week where all of a sudden half of the outlets would start power cycling. And when I say half, I have the 12 outlet unit, the WB 712 unit. I probably should have said that earlier. So the top row is all the odd outlets. So 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11. Those just started power cycling. And the office where I had this deployed, I had 3 servers, a workstation, and a NAS drive plugged into those to 5 of the top 6 outlets. So, of course, I had servers power cycling every 5 to 10 minutes. Not a good thing. So that was quite frustrating. Now, the bottom row, the even number outlets, not a peep, nothing. And again, sent an email to SnapAV, no response. I am not happy. So I do have the 800 series in the cart in my SnapAV account. I'm scared to pull the trigger and go through this all over again. I have other 700 models that are out there. So I'm trying to decide if I want to replace them now if there is an issue with the 700 model. So if anybody's heard, please let me know. What I also did was I started looking for alternatives. I know Uncle Marv usually doesn't look for alternatives, but in this case, I have to. This is something that I have grown to need in my business, where I do not have to do a truck roll just to power cycle a device. Oh, look, it's Florida Man. Mike Smith in the chat just asked a question here, asking about newer firmware. And to answer that question, yes, Mike, I actually did update the firmware on the Wattbox. And there was literally no change, the same behavior on both. And I actually upgraded to 2 different levels of firmware, because the first box that failed, when I updated it, it was at 1 level. The box that failed last week, and I can't say fail because, like I said, half the outlets are still working, but the top outlets are not. Upgraded that to the latest firmware, and it was a newer version, and that still had the same issue. So that's why I'm a little frustrated with not hearing back from SnapAV tech support. So right now, I know that the CyberPower has similar type units. TripLight has similar units, but Digital Loggers is a company that I've worked with for several years. They actually provided some of the devices at an airport that I used to work for. There's an airport here in South Florida, I won't mention the name, at least not yet, where Digital Loggers provided all of the equipment for power. They provided the noise machines. So I don't know if I can describe it properly, but airports have to have this little noise measuring system so that they can keep track of the noise levels of airplanes coming and going because residents nearby will complain that a plane was too loud or flying too low or things like that. So they have these sound recorders that will record sounds 24/7, and they keep a record of it so that when somebody in a surrounding neighborhood complains, they can go back at the exact time, hear what the noise level is, and either dispute with the customer or not customer, but resident. And I guess they have to, go before the city board and hear the complaints and stuff. So Digital Loggers is the company that supplied all that equipment. And when I stopped working with the airport, Digital Loggers still called me to go out and service their equipment. Digital Loggers is based out of it's either Colorado or California. I can't remember, but they're on the West Coast and I'm here. So it's funny because I still have to be the tech that goes on site to service their devices. And I go out probably once or twice a year to do that. And I saw that they had this device. So I went ahead and ordered one, and it will not be here until tomorrow. But I'm going to test that here at the office and see how it performs and see if maybe I can source new equipment. I'm a little bit nervous because I did read back in 2016 that they had some issues with the unit, probably something similar to what Wattbox and SnapAV is going through now. So I don't want to, fully abandon ship just because there may be a bad batch. Every company goes through this. Wattbox may be just going through this, and we'll see. But Digital Loggers has a similar device that is more than half the price. So that's probably something for me to take notice of and say, look, if it does the same job for more than half the price, why not give it a shot? The only thing that I am not sure about is they do not have a web interface like Oversee that comes with the SnapAV and the Watt boxes. So I can't go to a cloud account and see all of the boxes that I have. I asked them about that, and I got an answer that basically says not yet. But I couldn't get the answer of we're working on it, we're close, yes, it's in the works, nothing like that. So I don't know where that is. So I need to figure out if that is something that I can live with. Now, I do know that the workaround for that is that these are locations where I have a Domotes box in place. So worst case scenario is I can go into Domotes and see a lot of the functionality, at least I can with the Wattbox. So I need to test that and see if the Domotes will see inside the digital logger machine and if I can do some of the controls there without having to physically go into the network of the customer or into the cloud. And if the Domotes allows me to do that, that might be a solution as well. I already have the Domotes in place. So not having the cloud interface or the cloud browser might not be such a bad thing. So that's where we are with that. So those are the things with my updates on my favorite tech tools. And I do want to do this every so often. Part of it is because I know that I mentioned this stuff and then I never go back to them. So I wanted to make sure that I took time on shows to go back and always revisit some of the things we talk about. I don't want to gloss over them. And of course, I don't ever want to just be the person that talks good about stuff. And I don't want to be the person that always talks bad about stuff, but I want to be fair and honest. And when companies are good, they're good. When they're bad, they're bad. And right now, Wattbox, they're leaning to bad, in my opinion. And I do have, let's see, what time is it? Okay, I've got a couple minutes that I will do one more update. And for those of you that are watching live, I will be doing a post show. So when I end the podcast here, we'll stay on and I can go back to the chat, answer some of your questions, get more direct and give you some more answers there. So stay with me through the end of the show. About 4:50 today, I received a call from one of my customers that is using Freedom Voice phones. And as many of you have heard, Voice, they are not suspending the partner program, but they are not allowing new business. So if you are looking now to onboard a customer with Freedom Voice phones, you can't. They are not accepting new business. You can still support your existing customers. As a matter of fact, I had another customer order a phone that I didn't know about. I got the shipping notification. So they're continuing to do their stuff. Freedom Voice is still continuing to support those customers. I can add, remove, do whatever I needed, just no new business. But having said that, customer called today at 4:50. First words out of her mouth was, Freedom Voice sucks. I'm trying to make sure I don't say anything to get myself in trouble later. But that's what she said. And I asked her why. And of course, we went through the trouble she was having. Now, one of the problems was they had moved a phone that didn't connect to the network, and they just had to redo that one. That phone worked. But then they proceeded to tell me that they were having drops in calls. They were even having trouble calling extension to extension, where they would call the extension, it would go dead, call the extension, it would go dead. Third time it may work, fourth time it may work, and they just were dealing with that and not telling me. They were also having customers call in, and as they were going through the auto attendant pressing selections, it may not get to the destination. So I said, that's a major problem. You need to call Freedom Voice support with that, because that's something I knew that I could not help them with. So I should be getting a report tomorrow on what that is. I hope that that's just a quality of service issue, and if something can be resolved. This customer had been happy with Freedom Voice, but apparently they've been having some of these little nagging things and not telling me. And they did ask me if I had another provider to give them, and I said, yes, I do. Let me know how the support goes, and when you're ready, we can start looking at another provider. As many of you know, I did not want to push a new provider, but I am using Intermedia. We actually have switched to Intermedia inside our office, and for the most part, I have been happy with the service. There are some little things that I might not be happy about, some little tweaks that, in terms of configuration, things that I like to be able to do on other systems, I can't do on this system. I have to call support. Things like switching phones, VLANs, configuring things like the screensaver, little things like that, that, in my opinion, I shouldn't have to call support for that. I should be able to do that myself as the tech, but I haven't called support on them yet. I'm compiling my list, and we'll try to do all of that together. So that's where I am on that. Again, I'm not abandoning Freedom Voice. I still have a Freedom Voice phone behind me. Doesn't get used very much, but I have it. And all of my existing customers, except this one today, have told me that that they are not happy, but everyone else is happy. And part of the situation is and I tried to explain to her that switching providers isn't always going to solve the quality of service issues. Sometimes it has to do with internet. This is a customer that is on a Comcast broadband connection, which many of you know, I am so Comcastic. It is unbelievable. Comcast is just, when they're good, they're fast, but when they're not, they're not. And that's just the way of the world. So broadband connections are not the best for voice over IP. I have tried to explain that to them. I said, look, if you want great internet, you're going to need to get fiber. That is something that will happen down the road. Every VoIP provider, as far as I'm concerned, has had issues at one time or another. In my opinion, it's really, how consistent can you be? How good can your support be? And that's really what's going to make it or break it. And of course, be competitive in pricing. So we'll see. That's going to be an update for a later day. And that is going to do it for this episode of Podnuts Pro. So I want to obviously say thank you to all of you that have joined me here. Again, if you are just happening to pass by and catch this, Podnuts Pro is going to be live every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Simply go to podnutspro.com/live and we'll be here. If you also subscribe to Podnuts Pro on YouTube or the Facebook, you will also get notifications when I do publish when a show is going to air, especially if we're going to have a special guest. Tonight's special guest, Bradley Gross, was not scheduled. It was just something where I saw his podcast being released. I'm sorry, his broadcast being released. And I wanted to call him and say, hey, do you want to do an update on my story? And he said, absolutely. I do have a special guest coming up Friday. This was a guest that I had originally scheduled last month, and some stuff came up and he could not make it, but we are going to be back on this Friday at 1:30 p.m. So this is a special time. Bill Wasilius with Nexus Tech. And basically it is going to be Man in the Van meets the $1 million MSP. Nexus Tech is a corporation with about 300 employees across the country. We are going to talk shop and share notes, and should be a very, very good conversation. So I invite you guys to tune in for that. So again, folks, thank you very much. That's going to do it for this episode. I hope to see you again next week. And until next time, holla.